This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. As many of you know, I'm a video host and producer, and so I'm really interested in photography and video. And our guest has written a brand new book. You can see it between us right now. His name is Santino Zafarana. Did I get that halfway right?
You did perfectly,
All
Mark.
right. So we'll call him Santino.
Okay.
And he's written a book, Think Before You Shoot, The Art of Taking Creative Photographs. And I know that we do a health show, and every now and then we veer off. But I think taking photographs, looking at photographs from your grandparents, your great grandparents, is healthy. And Santino, welcome to the show. Would you agree with that? That looking at photographs can be a boost to your health?
Absolutely. I think the medium of taking pictures is boost your health because it's a creative process. And you mentioned in my book, I talk about when I was 10 years old, my uncle Salvatore Dolce introduced me to photography. And he gave me, when I turned 10, he gave me his Brownie.
Huh.
And I just love looking through that camera because you had to look down into this a viewfinder, which was kind of a bubble, but it was so magical. And I think the same thing happens when we look at old photographs. I look at old photographs now and it takes you back of a feeling what a human being has in their heart and their soul. It really reaches you. And that's what I try to do with the book, is to try to, when people take photographs, is to make sure they have a feeling that they transmit visually to the viewer.
I will have to get together. I have an old Yashica D twin,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I haven't used it in years, you know.
Yeah.
The leather casing is still fresh. It's really, really kind of good. How did you come up with this idea? I mean, everybody is
Yeah.
taking pictures now, on their iPhones,
Yeah.
right?
And
And it's
you
snap,
can.
snap all the time.
Yes, yes. Well, that's one of the things that I was conscious like over 15 years ago. I realized that we're clicking away like crazy, but really when we click away, we're not thinking about what's in front of us. And so that's why I called the book Think Before You Shoot, because there are so many things that you have to look at. And what happens is psychologically, we take pictures, click, click, click away. Then we look at the pictures afterwards and we don't like them, and we're cropping, we're saturating them, as I call it, the Instagram button, it's contrast. And then what we're doing is reaffirming that we're bad photographers. No, it's not that you're a bad photographer. It's just that you've never learned the discipline and the tools, and you're not thinking, you're just clicking. So if you could think a little bit and learn the tools, and that's what I did in the book. I made specifically this fine art book. It's never been done before, where a fine art book and some technicals have been put in. The book is a 204-page book. So there's a lot of great photographs in there. But I put 21 techniques, 21 pages that are very, very simple. And I didn't want to make it a technical book. So I simplified 2 paragraphs describing the technique, very simple, and you will get it, because I've done this a long time.
Well, you've been teaching, I have to tell everybody, you have a photography school in Los Angeles. And if people are interested, we'll have the website for that as well. I keep writing notes to myself here.
Okay.
One, you were recently featured in a photo exhibit in New York.
No, I was at the Museum of Modern Art. The Museum of Modern Art picked up my book. They felt that the book had a lot to offer to their viewers and customers. And it was a privilege being there because, as I stated before, is to be with other photographers for 150 years and have my book there. It was a recognition And I made the book in such a way, even the way I started the book is very, after the first double page spread, the very next picture is a road. And I want to take people on a creative journey. And people who already bought the book are saying wonderful things about it. And it's a journey to undo the way you've been thinking about taking pictures. Because the beauty about photography is the proof is in the pudding, right?
Oh yeah.
Your pictures, either they improve or don't improve. So if you're still making the same mistakes over and over again, you're not getting better. So that's what the book is about, is to change that.
Do people know if they're making a mistake? I mean, they can say, "Oh, that's a terrible picture." In my family,
Yeah.
um, uh, I have a couple of photographic stories. One is my mother would say, "Mark, don't make a face, smile." I mean, constantly, right?
Yes.
And so that's one. And
Yeah.
then the other one is my mother-in-law would say, "All right, let's get together," and it would be, a group of people, sans me. I don't know if she was saying something or not, but I would take the picture. She would direct, okay?
Right.
And I don't like, posed pictures,
Correct.
right?
Right.
You get one or two of those, but they're around the, Easter dinner or Passover Seder dinner, which is coming up as we're doing our show here. Um, you get, you get Uncle Billy who drank too much wine,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's what I would like. That's the kind of pictures
Right.
I like to take.
Right. So there is candid photos, and then there is photos that everybody wants to look good, right?
Yeah,
So when you're taking a candid photo, you have to know when to take it to be able to talk to your subjects.
hmm,
So communication is very important. I say a good photographer is a director and photographer, because I'll give you a perfect example. I was in the fashion field in New York, and you would think when I hired a professional model, sorry, they're getting paid for it. But I constantly still had to say to them, "Oh, you look good. Turn over here. Beautiful, beautiful. Turn over here." You see that in pictures all the time.
yeah,
She's getting paid a lot of money to do her job, but I still have to uh, get that emotion out of her that I want to see as the director or the photographer, what I think looks good that she's going to like and the audience is going to like. So going back to the family, you kind of have to talk to them. And also you sort of direct them, always say, look right into the camera and say, "Hey, Uncle so-and-so, or, Aunt so-and-so, remember this time, or look at what you're doing." And then they start laughing. That's when you
that's
take the photograph. So it is a communication you have to do.
right. And a lot of people are using their iPhones. I keep getting messages about attachments for your iPhone. Okay, you
Yes.
can do wide and fisheye, wide angle, even micro or macro.
Mhm.
So um, I'm going to hold my iPhone up.
Yes.
I see a lot of people taking pictures like
Mhm.
this, and I hate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
My medium TV is horizontal.
Mhm.
Okay. Instagram, I think, is wants it to be vertical. I
Correct.
hate that.
Yeah.
It crops everything out. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Well, there's a section in the book. That's very important. Again, there's 21 techniques, and that particular one is framing. Which way do you frame? So the first thing you need to look at is, no matter if it's an iPhone, because these techniques will work no matter what camera you have. So you look at the framing, and I have some rules. So if you're shooting one person, generally don't shoot them horizontally, because you're going to have more space, and that space will take away from the subject.
Right.
You don't place them correctly. So an easy way to do it is just do a vertical shot, and you eliminate that space. Now, let's say you want to take that horizontal shot. Okay. make sure, that's why they have this thing called the rule of thirds.
I wrote that down too.
Which is a top technique in the book. I explain the rule of third, and the rule of third, photographers take a lot from painting. So Leonardo da Vinci was a master at the rule of thirds. It was even created, he did the Last Supper in the rule of thirds. And so you place them a little bit over and you have 2/3 of negative space, but you have to be conscious of that negative space and make sure that the negative space is softer. So this way you run back to the positive space when you have that 2/3 negative space. And I go through it in the book, and it is very important, placement and framing.
Our guest is the author of Think Before You Shoot. You can see a picture of the book between Santino and myself, Santino Zafarana. And with a career of more than a quarter of a century, we'll say, he has taken all kinds of great pictures. Tell us about the picture on the cover.
Yes.
We've got this man who's, it's amazing. And you describe it in the book. He's holding a camera in one hand, and he's holding a cup of coffee and drinking it in the other. It looks like it was taken in Memphis or downtown LA, or where was it?
Yeah, it's a busy street. It was actually taken on 34th Street near 8th Avenue in New York City. And if you know 34th Street, it's a very busy street. But when I was basically waiting for a friend, and all of a sudden this gentleman with this camera, which is an old-fashioned camera, he basically converted into a Polaroid camera, and he does street photography of tourists, and he puts them in front of the Empire State Building, takes a picture, charges him $20 for the Polaroid. But when he sat down, I took a nice portrait, and he was giving me a really hard look, like he was like, "Oh, don't take my portrait." I've traveled around the world, that doesn't bother me. So I take a nice picture of him, but I wasn't satisfied. Why? Because it's a nice portrait, but I wanted more than that. And I am very in tune, which I talk about in the book. You always have to transmit a feeling from your photograph. So what the feeling that I wanted to transfer was, here is a street scene, very busy. I needed people in front of him, and I needed to slow it down. And we talk about speed, simplified. So I basically slowed my shutter speed down, which I get into the book very simply. And I framed him basically with the people that passed by. And I showed him the photograph. A year later, I came back to New York and I gave him a picture of it. And he just loved it. He just said, I showed him both. It's just the portrait.
Sure.
Then when you add the people in front to frame it, and again, it's a technique, it's called frame within a frame, which I talk about.
What about, they say fix it in post is a very common expression in video production.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, we'll fix it later is basically what it means. Photoshop. Do you believe in Photoshop?
I believe in post-production adjustments, but not heavily and not overly done. So the one thing that the new camera phones have done is to make it accessible to everybody to take a picture. We take now more pictures than ever before in history, but we also take more bad pictures now than any time in history. So that was part of the whole book, is to change that attitude and to show people how to do it. No matter if they have a camera phone or DSLR, you have to understand certain techniques with any discipline. And again, I try to make it as simple as possible, but I think camera phones, what they've done is given you a good exposure where we used to have a problem before that. So we get a better exposure now, but that's just the beginning of making a great photograph, placement, lighting. So I think camera phones are great. And in post-production, minimize as much as you can. There's never been in photography, and I know in post and film, you always want to make it look the best as possible. So, but you don't want to overdo it because then it becomes a little phony. And a perfect example of that is like we have now these screens, our TVs, that are so sharp that like Avatar, when Cameron did his
Yes.
Avatar, he learned that he first started shooting and the depth of field, the softness, everything was so sharp, it was making people sick actually when they were looking at the movie. So I want to make sure with technology and post-production like Photoshop, we minimize. So if we get a good, and it starts with lighting, and
Right.
that's why, as your audience can see right now, I just have a window light right now, which we talk about in the book. A window light or door light is beautiful light, and people don't even pay attention to it.
And I'm using window light as well. I
Mhm.
have my overheads on as well. But
Mhm.
what I've done is I blurred my background, which
Mhm.
is something that we're doing this on Zoom,
Sure.
which you can do. But I have a lens that if I'm doing an interview and I want it to be an intimate interview and I want the subject to be front and center, using the rule of thirds,
Mhm.
right? I
Mhm.
position the guest, the subject, and then I can sharp focus on them, but blur the background using the depth,
Sure.
losing the depth of
Sure.
field.
Yeah.
And one of the other things is we've got to wrap up here. Is aesthetic, okay? Everybody has their own aesthetic, even if you don't know what that means. You have one. It's and it's not something that if you cut yourself shaving, you don't use an aesthetic pencil. That's a different kind of thing.
Yes.
Um, I don't like I like unbalanced. Okay, it's just what I prefer.
Yeah.
So I may have somebody off to the left or to the right
Mhm.
on a video,
Right.
leaving blank space there. But because of a lot of what I do, I may want words to appear on the
Correct.
side.
Correct.
Um, uh, can you talk about aesthetic, self
Sure, sure,
everybody's
absolutely.
aesthetic?
So you started off with placement or framing, and what I usually tell our students, and I get into in the book, sort of the kiss of death is to put somebody right in the middle.
Yeah,
Why? We have two negative spaces that will outweigh your positive space. So we don't want to do that. So a simple way, generally, unless you're forced to shoot, like you're saying, for TV and then you're horizontal, it is better to push them over to the one side or the other and make sure you, like you have on your screen right now, you soften the background up. And this way, that 2/3 negative space is so soft and subtle, you run to the positive space, which is the subject matter.
right,
And you kind of bounce back and forth. And what we want to do is to make sure our eye sort of moves around the screen. It's like a painting. You could tell when someone goes to a gallery or a museum how fast they move through the different
right.
visual medium. If they're moving really fast, the artist wasn't as successful, in my opinion.
Got it.
So we want them. So in that case, to make sure that you framing is so important and composition is important. So the aesthetics, I mean, I could get into the aesthetics, I could define aesthetics or fine art. What is a fine art photograph that people attract to? But maybe on another program.
On another time,
Time.
I have to tell you that Santino and I have never met, and as soon as we met, we clicked. I mean, and talked
Yeah.
for 15, 20 minutes before we started our interview. The name of the book is Think Before You Shoot. And if you're into photography at all, or just want to look at some really wonderful photographs, this is a book for you. It's available, I know, on Amazon. Where else?
Local bookstores have it. Barnes and Nobles has it. Any fine art gift store. It's become a great gift book. The largest gift distributor just picked it up, Stephen Young, which they handle the whole Southwest. For any gift stores that you go into will have my book.
It's really terrific. Now we're going to have Santino back on our sister program. This is Late Night Health. We're going to have him cook with us on Mark Alyn Cooks Your Dinner. So that'll be happening sometime in late April, early May. We'll figure out a date, and I'll let everybody know. Santino, will you come back and talk sometime? And you're going away for
Absolutely.
2 months. When you
Yeah,
come back, we'll do this again. You'll tell us about the health in Europe.
absolutely. I'm glad to have back. And if you ever have any questions, or your audience have any questions, they could reach me at santino.thinkbeforeyouShoot on Facebook or Instagram. That's santino.at thinkbeforeyouShoot.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Well,
Mark.
that wraps up this edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. Thanks for watching.